You might well be wondering where I am because I'm not in my usual place. I'm actually out at my father's place at the moment because in the last week he fell over and broke his hip, and it's been a total trauma for everyone. So at the moment I'm actually staying out at his place so I can take care of him a bit. He's doing really well actually. He's able to move around on a Zimmer frame thing, I forget what they call them, a walker, that's the one. And he's still in quite a lot of pain, but he's got painkillers and all of those things, so he's just trying to get through it. It's been a huge stress for everyone and I'm pretty exhausted, but I thought I'd bring some filming equipment out here and at least film my 5,000 Q&A because I managed to get there a few days ago, right when my father was in hospital, so that put a little bit of a dampener on an otherwise celebratory moment, but I'm still really happy I made it to 5,000 subscribers, and thank you all very much for subscribing. If you haven't already done so, please click that subscribe button because I'm still trying to grow my channel. So as you can see behind me, here is Gandalf, and Trixie's also somewhere in the room. We had to bring the cats with us because we really just packed up everything and moved out here. I didn't really have time to take them to the cattery or anything like that. They were actually okay in the car. It's a 2.25 hour drive to get out to Clunes where my father lives, which is in country Victoria, but they were pretty good. They just sat quietly in their cages and they had been very good out here. A couple of little mishaps, but otherwise they've been very well behaved. So Trixie's in the corner here, playing the wrong side of the door game. If I let her out, she's just going to be on the other side of the door scratching to be let in. Oh, you're so naughty. Yes, you're going to stay there until I let you out. And then coming around here, where Nick and I sleep in here, here's Gandalf hanging out on the bed, and we've just got stuff kind of everywhere. Nick's on this side of the bed, and then you'll see a whole bunch of my stuff over here. All of my clothes and things. I really need to just sort through and do some folding, but I just can't be bothered at the moment. And I've also actually brought out my little red desk, which was in my office, and look, there's my old office chair as well after I replaced it with the pink chair, and this is where I have set up temporarily so that I can do some filming and hopefully a bit of art as well. I packed that bag just full of art supplies, whatever I could fit in there. I've got my colouring pencils, this is the Caran d'Ache Luminance set, some colouring books. I've got my filming bag down the bottom, this is where I've got all my computer gear, that's my laptop bag. And then I've got my laptop, a notebook, water bottle and other random stuff. I'm using Dad's light, and here is my phone mount, which I'm actually recharging at the moment. So I've got a few things set up here, which is good, and at least I can do some filming. I'm not too sure how long I'm going to be out here exactly. I just want to make sure that my dad can actually take care of himself because it's quite hard when you're walking around on the frame. But I've at least got enough art supplies with me that I can film a few videos hopefully, and I thought I would do that because it keeps me sane as well. I need something to do. So last week I put up a community post asking if you guys had any questions for me, and some of you certainly did. So I've written them all down in my notebook here, and I'm going to read them out and hopefully get through all of them and hopefully answer all of your questions. So let's get into it. The first ones which made me laugh. How do you stay so happy for most of the time? Are you really always so pleasant and cheerful? Oh yeah, totally. You should have seen me this last week. It has been a roller coaster of emotions. Just like anyone else, I have grumpy days and I have my ups and downs, but I do try to keep my YouTube channel as a safe space for myself as well. So I like to stay cheerful, and I tend to present the Genki side of myself. Genki is Japanese for enthusiastic and over the top, so most of the time I'm a lot more low-key. I just tend to project myself more when I'm talking to camera, otherwise I sound quite boring or monotonous. So I'm really just trying to increase the intonation of my voice, make it chirpier, and it also does help improve my mood when I do that anyways. For the most part, I'd say I'm an optimist and I try to look on the bright side of things, but you know, some days it's just not happening. You really do only get to see kind of my YouTube persona, Becky. My everyday self, Rebecca, tends to be a bit more boring than this and a lot grumpier too. What artwork are you most proud of? That's quite hard. I've done quite a lot of artworks. I think overall I'm just really proud, more than one specific artwork that I've just improved overall as an artist. Like, it's something I've been trying to work on over the past few years. I haven't been doing art that long full time. It's been about 4 years now, so not that long. And I guess when I started out doing it a lot more seriously, I had so much to learn. I still have heaps to learn, but I do feel like, especially this year, I'm really starting to improve with my drawing skills and draw things from memory, but also a lot more easily from a reference photo. So I think I'm just proud of the way that I'm progressing, and like anything in the creative industry, it's always a journey, and there's never really a final destination because there's always something new to learn. What is your favourite fountain pen and nib size? And this was someone who'd mentioned I haven't done a fountain pen collection video yet. Yes, I know, it needs to happen. I do have fountain pens. I don't really have a lot of them, but I do have some really lovely ones that I haven't used for a while, and I need to get out and start using them again. Probably one of my favourite fountain pens is a TWSBI Echo. Those are really gorgeous pens. Unfortunately, I don't have any with me, but they just have this huge chamber for filling with ink, and the nibs on them are always so smooth. I tend to prefer a medium nib for writing and a fine or extra fine nib for drawing when it comes to fountain pens. Here's another pointed question. Do you ever feel overwhelmed with the amount of art supplies you have? Have you ever thought of destashing or downsizing your art supplies? Sometimes, and not yet, is the short answer. Sometimes I go through my studio, especially when I need to tidy it up, and I'm just looking at everything going, where did this come from? It's just crazy. So I do have a lot of art supplies, especially since I started the YouTube channel. My acquisition of art supplies has definitely increased, but I was still buying things before it as well. So I just really like collecting them. I like shopping for art supplies, and it does become its own kind of hobby or obsession, collecting them. I'm sure quite a lot of you understand what that's like. Occasionally I get overwhelmed, but most of the time I just tend to more forget that I have things, and then I will find them months later and go, oops, I haven't used that yet. So that's more what it tends to be. I mean, I guess like anything, when it gets cluttered, it can be overwhelming, and I am thinking about changing up my studio a little bit, probably next year maybe. I want to change some of the furniture around, but that's kind of down the track when I can afford it a bit more, which is not right now. I've got a lot of other things to worry about. I probably will eventually do a destash and maybe move on some of the art supplies that I don't necessarily use or I don't particularly like. I don't think I really want to downsize at the moment. I'm quite happy with all of the supplies I have. Downsizing is for down the track when I have retired. You know, when you downsize your big house and move into a small house. Maybe then I will. Is your father an artist as well? Did you do art together growing up? Well, yes, my father is an artist, although really he's come into his artwork during his retirement. When I was growing up, he was a shift worker. He's done a lot of different jobs like police work, aviation security. He was even a bus driver for quite a long time. So he's always been busy throughout his career and maybe didn't really have the time for the art that he would have liked. Although I do remember that he did some oil paintings and things like that when he had a bit of time, I guess, as a hobby or pastime. But now he does quite a lot more art. The next one, I'm going to answer a few questions simultaneously because they all kind of relate to each other. So one of them is, how did you end up in Melbourne? And why did you stop working as a photographer? Why did you switch to drawing and painting? Another question is, what got you into painting in the first place? And another one, which is kind of related to these, is how did you and Nick meet? So I'm just going to probably tell a brief story of all of that and give you some history as to how I ended up being an artist on YouTube. So I was born in New Zealand and I grew up there, did all of my schooling, and I also went to university in Auckland. I was not an artist growing up, so to speak. I mean, I always had an interest in art and I dabbled a bit here and there, but it was never something that I fully concentrated on. At the time, I was quite into science, especially biology, so I actually did my degree in biological sciences, and it's completely unrelated to what I do now, but I have always really loved science. not so much physics and anything mathematical. That kind of side of things is really confusing for me. I'm just hopeless with numbers. But I did my degree, I finished it. My father was actually living in Australia at that time, in Bundaberg, Queensland. So I moved over with him and I stayed there for 9 months before taking a job in Japan for a year teaching English. That was the time of my life. I was 22 when I did that, and it was an amazing year. I also taught another year in China, of all places. That was a lot harder than Japan. Of the two countries, Japan was just the best, and I would highly recommend visiting. It is such a great country. There's so much amazing stuff to do, and it's just, it's so completely different to what we as Westerners live like. It was a big culture shock, but it was really fun. So that was kind of in my early 20s, and then I came back to Brisbane because my father in the meantime had moved down to Brisbane and had got a job there. So I stayed with him while I decided what I wanted to do next. And then I ended up in Melbourne, and I've been here since 2005, so quite a long time now. I first encountered Nick when I was 19 years old, and this is in the late 90s, which is showing my age here. I'm 43, in case you're wondering. We met online of all places. This is when the internet was really just starting to take off, so there wasn't anything like Facebook or Messenger, but there was a program called ICQ. Does anyone remember that? It was actually quite a lot like Messenger, and I think it was somehow related to Google. I can't remember exactly, but all I remember is that whenever you got a message, it would go, uh-oh. And so, honestly, I was on that thing all the time in my late teens. And one day I got an uh-oh message, and there was a new person called Dr. Nick 123, and it turned out to be Nick. He'd seen my profile, and because we had the same taste in music and had science backgrounds, he'd sent me a message to saying hi, and we'd formed a friendship that way. We actually chatted for around 2 years before we ever met. And once I met him in Australia, we just kind of clicked almost immediately. It was like meeting an old friend, and I already just felt like I knew him so well. So we have been friends for a very long time, and I actually moved to Melbourne for him because he's got all of his family in Melbourne, and I just kind of have family everywhere. I'd moved a couple of times already, so it wasn't too much of a big deal for me to move to Melbourne. It took a while to get used to, but I got into it, and I really love living here. Melbourne is a great city. I became an Australian citizen in 2009, so I've been an Australian citizen for 13 years now. And we got married in 2007, so we've been married for almost 15 years. Our anniversary is next month, which just is crazy. I sort of can't believe we've been together for that long. And no, we don't have kids. But over the years, I've done a few different kinds of jobs. For a while, I was actually a carer. I did disability support, and then I did aged care. Decided I really didn't like working in aged care. It is just the hardest job. So I did actually go more into the lifestyle and leisure side, where I was doing crafts with the residents and things like that, and that was a much more suitable job. The last job that I was doing kind of fizzled out, and so I thought, well, maybe now is a good time to move on. And during this time, I'd started taking up photography as more than just a little bit of a hobby. I'd started photographing people, and I was building up a portfolio, so I thought I might as well try and be a photographer full time. And I did that for quite a few years. Around that time, we moved from a 2-bedroom apartment in the city out to the suburbs where we live now, and that's a 4-bedroom house, but the back bedroom has an attached kind of living area. I've done a tour of my studio and office area, so I converted all of that into my photography studio, and I had the office as well, which was the 4th bedroom. And I was working out of there. I was doing mostly portrait photos. I really loved doing that, and I did a lot of photography with models, and that was just the best time. I had such a great time doing that. A lot of really creative photos, face paint, makeup, hair, but it wasn't really paying very well, and so I ended up starting to take more of the family photo kind of jobs. And I guess over time I just kind of lost my passion for it because I wasn't doing what I wanted to do, and I just kind of woke up almost one day and decided I just didn't want to do it anymore. The last year was just not very good, and I was really burnt out because we'd also been overseas for 6 weeks, and I'd taken photos the entire time, and when we got back it was like I couldn't pick up my camera anymore. it was really weird. I've never had this experience before where I've just completely shut down and not being able to create anything, and just the thought of picking the camera up was just, I couldn't do it. It was horrible. It was just a sign, I felt like, that it was time to finish up, and I had lost the fun of the photography, and I think that really bothered me because I still really love it, but I just am very glad I stopped kind of doing it as a professional thing and just doing it more as a fun pastime, because now it feels like that pleasure is coming back for me when it comes to photography. Also, around the time I was doing photography, I started getting more interested in art, and it kind of just built together side by side, and the art just started to creep in. The first thing I really did was a couple of oil paintings, because I had all these oil paints. I dabbled in it quite a few years prior to that, and then kind of given up because I wasn't very good. But we went out to Uluru, and it was just the most magical place I've ever been to. It was fabulous. And when we got back, I actually did a few paintings, and they were quite successful. I've got them hanging on our living room wall. I unfortunately don't have them here, of course, so I can't show them. I did 3 oil paintings because I was so inspired by the landscape and the incredible rock formations, using my photos as reference. So that was really fun. That's kind of where it started. And then I started getting into coloured pencils, and I was colouring and drawing in my own time, and just ever so slowly it just kind of crept in, and I thought that it might be something I would be interested in learning a bit more about. So I actually found a course online from New Masters Academy, and I paid for about a year. They had a really great special on 1 year, and so I snapped it up. And during roughly around 2018, 2019, I actually just took a year to do some study. It was not like a diploma or anything like that, it was just independent study, but there was a lot of amazing resources, and so I learned more about the fundamentals of art, drawing, how to draw, things like that. And I just realized how much I really loved making art. And then I got into watercolors, and that was it. I was hooked. And ever since then, I've been collecting art supplies. I've been trying out different things. It's like this whole world has opened up for me, and I just want to try and experience everything. Which is why I've always have so many different things on my channel, because I really don't want to be just doing one thing for the rest of my life. I just really like to try a lot of different art supplies and find out the types of mediums that I'm interested in. So far it's watercolors. I still really like colored pencils, kind of interested in pastels. I really want to try those a bit more, and just inks, everything, really. I think that's answered all of those questions. I've kind of forgotten because I've just been rambling on for so long. What art advice would you give your younger self or a newer artist? Oh, that's a hard one. I think don't be afraid to try new things. Even if you make a mess of it, it doesn't matter. You can always try again. I mean, even now, I still have days where I think, oh gosh, I'm just going to make a mess of this if I start it. But if you can get past that starting hurdle, generally the artwork will continue as it's meant to. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you are never too old to start making art. I started this in 2019, so I was 41 years old when I started my YouTube channel. Oh, how I wish I was in my 20s starting a YouTube channel. Oh my gosh, I see all these younger 20-something-year-old artists out there, and I'm so jealous of them. I wish I could go back in time and maybe do art, but then perhaps my life would be incredibly different. Maybe I never would have met Nick, and then I don't know where I would be now. So sometimes things work out in a very roundabout way. I think I'm where I'm meant to be now because I have never felt so comfortable as I do right now with anything, and making art is just something that has really awakened my spirit, and it's my happy place, so that's why I do it. I hope it continues. I really hope it's not like the photography and fizzles out. I think this is a little bit different because there are just so many types of artworks you can do and different media. Sometimes when I get tired or am feeling a bit burnt out, I'll switch to colouring in, or I might just sketch things with a pencil and go back to the basics. So there seems to be a lot more scope for movement. So for me, photography now is much more of a pleasure because I can just do it, and it's like an extension of my artwork, so I can take photos for my own reference. So I think the photography and the art really do go along side by side quite harmoniously. A lot of my knowledge from photography translates over to art, especially when it comes to light. So there's a lot of skills that I've learned over my life which kind of work with the art, and then I'm also having to learn a whole bunch of new skills, which is really interesting. I knew nothing about videography when I first started my channel. I still don't really know that much, but I'm trying to improve slowly over time. Oh, and I've got one other question here, which is arguably one of the more difficult ones. Which watercolors do you like best? Oh, I don't know. I've got so many that I like. I can give you probably my top 4 or 5. I think the ones which I always think of first is the Sennelier watercolors, the artist grade ones. They are just so beautiful. I really love their luminosity, but I also have a few other favorites, and those are Daniel Smith, M. Graham I've come to really love. Those are absolutely stunning paints. And I also really love Schminker. To begin with, I wasn't so keen on Schminker Horror-Dan. There was just something about them, they weren't that bright. But then I found that they act quite a lot like the Sennelier paints, that when you start to layer them, that their luminosity really comes out. And I have grown to love them over time. I've also tried a whole bunch of cheaper watercolors and had fun with them, so really I think it's just a matter of trying things out, and you do develop your own favorites. But yeah, I'd say those 4 brands are my top watercolors, with maybe Sennelier still at number 1. I should probably do a video doing a direct comparison of all of them. That should be really fun to do. So what got me into painting in the first place? Well, I just kind of fell into it, really. I started the YouTube channel, the pandemic hit, and the rest is history, because I just decided to continue with this, and it seems to be going pretty well so far. I've managed to reach 5,000 subscribers. 2.5 years ago, I would never have dreamed of being at 5,000 subscribers. I do keep my goals fairly modest. So my next goal is to double this and get to 10,000, and then I guess I'll keep continuing. Some days and weeks it's easier than others. This week's been pretty tough, but I'm trying to hang in there, and hopefully I will get another video out relatively soon. Not sure if it will be my exact schedule, I'll just see how I go. So thank you very much for watching. I hope I answered all of your questions well. I'm not very good at doing this. I did not script any of this. In fact, I don't really script any of my videos. I just kind of talk so that it sounds more natural, because if I read off a script, I tend to go into a monotone, or I start to trip over the words. So I just ad-lib everything. So I hope that's worked out okay for this. I think the lighting keeps changing because the sun keeps going in and out of a cloud, and I have one small light here which hopefully is keeping my face relatively well lit. If you have any other questions, do feel free to ask them in the comments, and I will try to get to them. I try to answer all of your comments. Sometimes I miss them because YouTube doesn't let me know they're there. So I do read everything when I can. I appreciate all of your support and your comments. You guys are amazing. You really have made this wonderful experience in my life, and I'm very happy to continue doing this for as long as I can. I hope you're all having a fantastic week out there, better than mine, and I will see you all really soon in my next video. Take care out there. Swatch you later. Bye.